Hi guys, I am getting set up. Sorry, I was having a little technical difficulties, so I'm a couple minutes behind. But welcome to Legal Talk Tuesday. Brooke here. As always, if you follow us, we take turns alternating the different topics that are the practice areas that Laura and I perform for our clients here at our firm. So this week is our business week. And I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I do quite frequently here. It's very important, often overlooked, but why you need an operating agreement for your LLC. So many states actually don't require you to have an operating agreement for your LLC, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need one because your operating agreement can really establish the structure of your business. It's going to help protect your limited liability status, and it's also going to create the rules that are going to govern how you conduct business and how you do things internally. Also, even if your state doesn't require it, one thing that happens pretty frequently is that your bank may require that you have an operating agreement. So just keep that in mind. So first, you can customize how you structure your business. So one thing about having a limited liability company is that it allows you to choose how you can actually split your profits, divide your workload, the distribution of ownership interests, things like that. So if you have a corporation, for instance, you're not necessarily going to have that kind of flexibility to choose your roles and the rights and responsibilities of each owner. In a classic corporation, if you are, say, for instance, a 20% shareholder in that corporation, then you're likely going to receive 20% of the profits or losses. An LLC actually allows you to set this up a little bit differently because that's not necessarily always the objective of every business. So, for instance, if a shareholder owns 20%, but they actually do 80% of the work, and then their partner owns the other 80%, but just does 20% of the work, in their operating agreement, depending on their internal arrangement, these partners can actually choose to split their profits and losses equally at 50% or however they want. The second thing is you really want to be careful to make sure to protect your limited liability status, because if you are going to the trouble of setting up this LLC, you are filing it with the Secretary of State, you are paying all the fees that are associated initially, annually, you want to make sure that your liability is still limited and protected. So LLCs, especially if you are a single member LLC, which just means there's one owner. If you have multiple owners, it's considered a multi-member LLC. But single member LLCs are given much more recognition and deference by the courts if they've actually formed this operating agreement, because without this formality of the operating agreement, your company actually could be viewed as a partnership or sole proprietorship, or however the court, sorry, I've said corporate 15 times. So however the court interprets the actual functioning of your business. So what it looks like to them, regardless of if that's how you're set up or your intent. So this could actually, compromise your liability protections in court, especially if it's just you and you're a single member LLC and you've set up this company because you want yourself to be a separate entity from your business so you can protect your personal assets. That could be detrimental if a court finds, if you're sued and a court finds that you are, actually functioning more as a sole proprietor, because you're not going to have those protections. So you want to be very careful in making sure that you're not just setting it up and walking away. So, when you're forming that LLC, you're going to go file your articles of organization with the Secretary of State. And that's one thing. And that's, a step in becoming official. But again, that does not guarantee that you're going to be shielded or any of your members will be shielded from personal liability. So if something arises, like I said, the courts can kind of disregard that LLC, technical designation if it appears that the facts of the situation, however you're doing business, are not, of the owner specifically, fail to meet the requirements to be an LLC. So you really want to make sure you're separating your personal and business accounts and your personal self and business separately and treating them as two separate individuals. Because if you do, so for instance, if you're treating your personal and your business accounts as one and the same, a court can say, well, that's not a separate entity, you're a sole proprietorship, because you never really separated your entity into a separate individual, except for setting up some kind of name. Also, what you could do for that, you could open a separate bank account. Hopefully you do that. Most people do, but opening a separate bank account, creating your official operating agreement with the formal rules about how the business operates. And then in addition to that, not just setting that up, but actually following through with those rules, that can prove to the court that you are in fact a separate entity from your LLC. And that the business is operating independently from you as an individual. So, that can be a very big determination from a liability standpoint if something arises. So you want to make sure that you not only, take the formal steps to create the LLC, but that you are functioning as an LLC, that you have all the proper documents in place to do business as an LLC. The third thing is avoiding your state's default rules, which is very similar to how the court can interpret things. So if you don't create this operating agreement, then you're going to be subject to, Arkansas's default rules on LLCs. And so those rules tend to be more one size fits all, and they're not necessarily tailored to your specific needs or wants. So if you've ever tried to Google, a form, they're very standard. They're not personalized. If it's fill in the blank, whatever, it's not going to be custom to your business. There's typically few or maybe just one option on how you can set things up. But there are actually lots of different options when you're trying to create this agreement to really craft it in a way that is specific to your business. So it's really better to take the time and plan out the guidelines and the processes and procedures that are best suited for you specifically at your LLC. So, whether you're buying something, selling something, whatever, you want the agility to shape all the rules that govern your business and your goals of your business. And you want to be able to do that through this operating agreement, which is going to allow you to make those decisions and put those things down and make those things enforceable should something come up. So some other things that you can, that are pretty big things that you can plan for in your operating agreement, and it's a good reason to have an operating agreement, is death of a member. So if you're starting a business, especially with someone else specifically, have you taken time to think about what if one of you dies? Obviously, as the business grows, like in the initial steps, sometimes it's like, well, we're not really making much money. It's not really a big issue. But, if your business starts growing, your interest in that business is probably going to become a really important, substantial personal asset for you. And so your interest in that business, you're going to expect to be able to leave that. You want to be able, nobody's building a business to not be able to, grow it and also leave it if we have spouses, loved ones, children. So if something happens to you, what does that look like? But also, what does that mean for the business? How's your business protected if all of a sudden, one of the key members has passed away? So will, the deceased member's spouse now step into their shoes? That's a scary one. So, are they going to serve as a voting member of your LLC? For certain industries, like the legal profession, currently you cannot, in Arkansas at least, and if you're not an attorney, you can't have an ownership interest in a law firm. That doesn't mean that you can't, your spouse can't make money off of that if you pass away, that they don't have a right to that as an asset, but it just means that they don't have a voting right. A lot of businesses aren't regulated that way. So if something happens to your business partner, their spouse in theory could step in and become a voting active member in your business. And if your deceased partner is actually someone who has the majority interest in your business, then it's possible that they could have a majority say in how the business goes. So that's really important. And you also want to consider things if the business doesn't have enough liquid assets to buy back the deceased member's interest. I mean, we've done all sorts of creative things like payment plans or some kind of right of first refusal for the partner to jump in and purchase it, or maybe purchase some of the interest. So there's different things that you can do. Second thing is divorce. So I don't know the statistics, I should, but Laura is our divorce lawyer. So probably somewhere around 50% of marriages in the United States end in divorce at least. And so, it's similar to if someone dies, a divorce is likely going to have a substantial impact on your business, as again, the same things could happen. The divorcing member's spouse may end up acquiring interest in your business if you haven't planned otherwise. So what is that going to mean for your business? It's going to depend on, the specifics of your state, of your business, of your profession. But again, they may be considered, the spouse may be considered a member and have voting rights. And that's really not good in any scenario, probably, but especially if that's not intended. But, in a divorce scenario, you don't want this third person to come in with their ex-spouse having to, run these business, especially with you. So that's something that's really important. And disagreements. This is a big one. When you first get into business, a lot of times sunshine rainbows, everybody's really excited about what is happening. And, your goals are pretty much aligned, but everyone kind of goes into business with different long-term goals and visions for where they want to take the business, how they want to operate the business. And even the best partnerships can get to, they can sour, they can get to the point where, their interests no longer align. And so an operating agreement can really set forth how any disagreements between members can be resolved. It sets out rules for how to handle these conflicts up front. And then you can actually reduce the chance of any animosity towards each other, down the road if you plan in advance. And, having an attorney draft an operating agreement for you is very helpful because, we do this all the time and we are able to foresee some of those issues and potential pitfalls that may happen in the future. And then also an operating agreement can allow for growth. So it can anticipate what might happen or where you might could take the business and structure the business with flexibility to permit it to happen without having to change management, voting structure, business structure. If you can structure it correctly on the front end, then there's not a lot of, big overhauls or changes that you will probably have to make. So for example, if you're starting a new business, you may see opportunities down the road for additional locations or bringing on someone as an investor or even partnering with other businesses. Well, if you don't have an operating agreement, the rule may default to where that new investor automatically gets a certain percentage of interest in your business. And again, that could control your whole business depending on what that looks like if you're basing it on how much capital is invested in the business. And so you want to be careful to craft that in a way where you are growing, you're able to grow and you're able to change your structure and do things creatively that benefit your business as you go along, but that are not going to disrupt operations and have you, changing things altogether. So if you have this in place, it can contemplate that future growth from the beginning, get a structure in place, enables you to be flexible and pivot where needed without, giving up any kind of managerial control or ownership interest or anything like that in your business. And then lastly, which is really important for a lot of things, I think, but an operating agreement really helps you manage expectations. So the most important thing that it really does is it structures your business and also gives some clarity. So the topics of your operating agreement can cover tons of things. Like I said, these are just some of the big things that an operating agreement almost always covers, but making sure to set forth rules for things like voting, termination, assignment, accounting, allocations of profit, losses, any kind of dispute resolution. Do you want mediation, arbitration? Can you litigate immediately? There's just so many things, so many different topics, but you want to ensure that every member of the business is on the same page, has a very clear understanding of how the business is going to operate when certain situations arise. And so having an operating agreement can go a long way in making sure to ensure the success of your business, not even just at the setup, but ongoing and for long term. So thank you guys so much for joining me today on Legal Talk Tuesday. Laura and I will be back here together next week to talk about some estate planning, which goes a little bit hand in hand with, and the reason we come on here and talk about it together, because she does a lot of family law, I do business law, estate planning is really where it overlaps. And so good estate planning can also help you avoid certain things when you are conducting business or own a business. So tune in next week for that, and that will be at 11:30 Central Time. So thanks so much. I hope you guys have a great week.